December to 18 BC, the west bank of the lower Trebia River, modern northern Italy. After capturing Saguntum in Iberia, the famous Carthaginian general Hannibal advanced through the Alps and invaded Italy. In the floodplain of the western bank of the lower reaches of the Trebia River, near the settlement of Placentia, and Piacenza, two armies met, the Carthaginian troops of Hannibal and the Roman army under the command of Sempronius Longus. Each army numbered about 40,000 men. The Carthaginians were stronger in the cavalry, the Romans in the infantry. Having strengthened the army of Scipio, the consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus hoped to engage in battle with Hannibal, thinking that he could gain glory against the Carthaginian commander. Using information obtained from his spies, Hannibal correctly assessed Sempronius' reckless nature, suggesting that he could probably be provoked into battle at the time and place Hannibal chooses. Camping at Placentia, the Romans built a pontoon bridge across the lower Ticinus and continued west. When his scouts reported the presence of the Carthaginians nearby, Scipio ordered his army to set up camp. The Carthaginians did the same. The area between the Carthaginian camp and Trebia was a treeless floodplain where it was apparently impossible to set up an ambush. Hannibal forced his younger brother Moggo to take 1,000 cavalry and 1,000 infantry knights south of where he intended to fight and hide in an old stream full of bushes. The next morning, either December 22nd or 23rd, was cold and snowy. Just before dawn, Hannibal sent his Numidian cavalry across the freezing river to taunt the Romans by ridiculing Sempronius with personal insults and instigating a fight. Meanwhile, the rest of his army had an early breakfast and all the warriors greased themselves to protect themselves from the bitter cold and prepared for battle. When the Numidians appeared, Sempronius ordered his entire cavalry to drive them away. The Numidians easily scattered and retreated, but then turned around and attacked with great courage. The clash turned into a mass battle, but since the Numidians refused to retreat, Sempronius quickly ordered his 6,000 velites to go into battle, and then his entire army. Sempronius was so eager to fight that few of the Romans had time to have breakfast. The Numidians slowly began to retreat, and Sempronius drove after them, his entire army in 3 columns, each 4 kilometers to 0.5 miles long, through the icy waters of the Trebia, which flowed chest high. The hardy Numidian horses forded the cold river without much difficulty, while the Roman infantry, gathered on the far bank of the Trebia, got wet and shivering. The Romans were met by the Carthaginian light infantry. Behind them, the entire Carthaginian army was built for battle. The Romans also formed up in battle formation and advanced. The two forces were now lined up, For the first major standard battle, the Carthaginian army formed up symmetrically. The 8,000 Gallic infantry were in the center. On each side of them was a formation of 6,000 African and Iberian veteran infantry. On the far side of each of these were half of the surviving elephants, and on each wing were 5,000 cavalry. The Roman army was drawn up in standard order: 16,000 legionaries in the center, 10,000 allied infantry on each flank, and finally 2,000 cavalry on each flank. Sempronius ordered his army to advance in the traditional Roman manner, slowly and in perfect order. On each wing 5,000 Carthaginian and 2,000 Roman cavalry charged each other. Both encounters ended rapidly, the Romans fleeing back over the Trebia and most of the Carthaginian cavalry pursuing them. In addition, skirmishers' velites were advanced forward. The first clash took place between the arrows of the two armies. The Roman troops were outnumbered, probably tired, and of lower quality than Hannibal's own riflemen. The archers began to exchange javelin throws with each other. The velites were driven back, and the heavy infantry went into action. It was a tough clash of heavy infantry. The soldiers were some better than others, all professional and battle-hardened. The snow was covered in blood, and there were many dead around. Sending forward their war elephants against the Roman horses became frightened of the foreign animals and fled, rendering the Roman Golgotha useless. Hannibal's well-trained Golgotha began to move towards the now undefended Roman flanks. The Carthaginian light infantry, who had withdrawn to the wings behind the cavalry, moved forward and ran the now exposed Roman flanks. the Roman light infantry, who had withdrawn to the rear of Roman heavy infantry, turned to face this developing Carthaginian threat. Only in the center did the Romans fare better, where they outnumbered Hannibal's troops, despite being weakened by many of their component units having to turn to the flank or rear. At the same time, unnoticed in the heat of battle, Mago's force of 2,000 had been making its way down the watercourse onto the plain and into a position where they could attack the Romans' left rear. Some time later, Mago's force charged into the Velites, who were already fending off the Carthaginian light infantry, but their formation held. Some of the rear rank of the legions, the Triarii, turned to assist the Velites. Increasing numbers of Carthaginian cavalry broke off their pursuit, returned and attacked the Roman rear. Eventually the strain told, and the units of Latin allies and Gauls on the flanks, and the Velites to the rear started to break up. Meanwhile, unable to retreat with cavalry pressure on both flanks, the Romans were forced to keep trying to break through the center of the Carthaginian troops, routed the 8,000 Gauls facing them, as well as a unit of African heavy infantry. By the time they broke through the scent and reorganized, it was clear that the rest of their army behind them had disintegrated and the battle was lost. Sempronius, who was fighting with the Roman infantry, ordered them away from the site of the battle and, maintaining their formation, seeing that the Romans are retreating, the Carthaginians concentrated on pursuing and cutting down the partially surrounded balance of the Roman army. Fewer than 10,000 of Sempronius' 40,000 were able to make it to the other side. They returned to their camp in Placentia. The remaining 30,000 were killed by Hannibal's troops, or drowned in the Trebia while trying to retreat. Hannibal successfully inflicted massive destruction on the Roman forces at Trebia, losing only a few hundred of his men. This was the first major battle of the Second Punic War, between the Carthaginian troops of Hannibal and the Roman army, and ended in a heavy defeat for the Romans. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. Like and comment on this video.